Dr. Grady, you pointed out that animals would have gone from vegetarian diets to meat-eating diets. So the question here from Chris Peacock is, how long after the flood could everyone eat meat without causing an extinction?
Well, actually, I'm going to start by pointing out to Chris, extinction is a proof of creation. What is the one thing that evolutionists are so concerned about? It's extinction, which is why they want to keep more and more of a biodiversity alive. Because extinction disproves evolution. If evolution were true, they wouldn't be concerned about extinction at all. But we don't see any new forms coming along. So let's think about this. If evolution was true, we would have more and more creatures, the mushroom, tree, bushes of life. And the ones that became extinct would be inferior, and therefore evolutionists wouldn't worry about it. On the other hand, if creation was true, then we would start with a certain number, whatever that number was, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. And then after creation, you have only two possibilities. You either maintain the same ones, or if we do have any extinct, we have less and less over time. Now, what do we have visually seen on Earth today? Less and less over time. That's a proof of creation. Now, in terms of life and extinction after the flood, you have to remember the flood caused the extinction of somewhere in the area of 90% of all life forms that have ever existed on the Earth. And this is a number that both creationists and evolutionists would agree with. There are plants, there are animals that simply didn't make it through the flood. Mostly plants, frankly, because the majority of animals made it through the flood. But many of them became extinct after the flood for a good variety of reasons. Now, I think that everybody's talking about dinosaurs when they think about these issues. So let's talk about, why did the dinosaurs become extinct? First of all, we know dinosaurs were on the ark. There are 10 references to dinosaurs in the Old Testament after the flood. We have human history, starting with Herodotus coming up till 1883, where even evolutionists say that they saw dinosaurs. We have artifacts. We have art proving that people saw dinosaurs even into recent times. And so, why did they go extinct? Well, first of all, the flood caused tremendous environmental changes. Remember that the ground became less fertile. One of the reasons was that the ground that existed before the flood was churned into mud, nutrients dissolved into water. This is why we have salt water. And the mud layers laid back down, but they were less nutritious. They had less nutrients in them because they were dissolved in the water and went into the oceans. Air pressure dropped in half, approximately. Now, we don't have the exact figures, but air pressure before the flood was somewhere in the areas of 1.6 to 2.2 times what it is today. And so creatures like pterosaurs, which are not flyers, they're gliders, could not exist in the sizes that they once did, possibly not even able to exist at all. Remember that if we have all of these plants becoming extinct at the time of the flood, for example, the Earth had great lycopod forests before the flood. We know that because the billions of lycopod trees we find fossilized in the ground. Yet there's not a live one on Earth today that we know of. This is true then of a lot of other plants. Well, remember, everybody was a vegetarian. So some of the dinosaurs, being vegetarians, could no longer find the foods that they were used to and became extinct by starvation. I would also point out that some dinosaurs were tasty. Today we still eat reptiles. Here in Florida, we eat alligators. Out in the southwest part of the United States, we eat rattlesnake. Reptiles are eaten all over the world. Well, I like to point out to somebody, which would you rather do? Kill a really big, dumb reptile and feed the family for 6 months, or try to kill a saber-toothed tiger who's just gotten a taste for meat? And so some of them were hunted into extinction. But let's take it a little further. There were those that existed. Now, in Job chapter 40, verse 15, this is roughly 350 years after the flood, Behemoth is clearly a dinosaur. If we take a look at Leviathan, clearly a large marine reptile mentioned 5 times in Scripture. If you go to Psalm 91, I believe it's verse 13, it talks about, in most English translations, dragon. Now, the word dragon is simply the old word for dinosaur. Remember, the word dinosaur didn't come into existence until 1841. So dinosaur was the word we use in modern time, but it was dragon prior to that for most people. If we then take a look in Isaiah, again, twice he says he saw flying dragons, flying serpents, flying reptiles. So these are various references. I'm just trying to point some out. But again, Herodotus, about 2400 BC, 400 BC, about 2400 years ago, talks about, again, flying dragons. It sounds very much like the description of Rhamphorhynchus, though we can't be positive about that. Alexander the Great's army saw dinosaurs on their way going into northwestern India. Flavius Josephus and Pliny the Elder both talk about them 2,000 years ago in the 1st century. Other historians, other naturalists, Flavius Philostratus in the 300s, Marco Polo in the 1270s. We have in England a variety of things. The Chronicles of Canterbury Cathedral mention them about 1445. The cathedral at Carlisle in northern England clearly shows them. We find them depicted in art and artifacts all over the world. Figurines in Chinese tombs. We see over 33,000 clay figurines of dinosaurs in Mexico that, according to evolutionists, are at least 1,800 to 2,800 years old. Ica stones down in Peru. The Stegosaurus at the temple at Angkor Wat. We find these things all over the world. I have been in Armenia speaking, and there's a church, a very ancient church there, that has a couple of dragons depicted above a window. The list just goes on. And so what happens? The various types of dinosaurs become extinct over a long period of time, over hundreds and hundreds of years, slowly, gradually, one here, one there. But St. George and the Dragon, I think, is a great illustration. It's a true story. It occurred in the early 300s. Now, why would these stories of St. George and the Dragon and other dragon slayers and so forth come into existence? They're not myth. Beowulf, the great epic poetry, clearly describes a pterodactyl. Well, remember, dinosaurs are vegetarians, and they're big. Not all of them. Many of them are small. But let's just say you got one that's 20, 30 foot long, and it's a vegetarian. And you're a farmer, and you've got a cornfield. And this dinosaur comes across your cornfield and says, lunch. Well, that's a destruction of your income. So what are you going to do? You're going to pay somebody who's a dragon slayer to come and kill that reptile to protect your crops. And so some died for natural reasons of extinction, no food, low air pressure. Others were hunted specifically because they tasted good. Others were slain because they were a nuisance. But this is how they became extinct, but over hundreds and hundreds of years of time.